Ukrainian officials say that hundreds of graves have been found outside Izium. I'm going to check the pronunciation of that in a moment. Days after the town was retaken from Russia. Wooden crosses, most of them marked with numbers, were discovered in a forest outside of the town by advancing Ukrainian forces. So as Ukraine continues to take back territory, is this the beginning of the end for Vladimir Putin's war? Well, I'm joined by journalist Danny Armstrong, a former Moscow correspondent. Izium, Danny, did I get that right?
Yeah, it's easy for me to say. Izium is the pronunciation. Really harrowing site that has been uncovered in Izium, around 445 bodies, including 20 to 25 Ukrainian soldiers. Now, it's important to note that this mass grave has been around since World War II. In May, some Russian forces said it was being used for the graves of Ukrainian soldiers that wouldn't be taken by the Ukrainian army. Now, what we've seen in the past few days completely refutes that.
Right.
We have seen civilians as well as soldiers, their corpses showing signs of torture, of their hands tied behind their back, of execution killings, of ropes around their necks, of covers over their heads. This is for civilians and soldiers as well. Really, really harrowing images. Now, Izium, from a geographical point of view, is a really important city. It's, if we take the northeastern territorial losses by the Russian army in Kharkiv, Izium is within the Kharkiv region, but is also the next major city on from Kharkiv on the way to Donbass. Now, President Putin this week has said his goal, rather limited, is to liberate the whole of the Donbass region where the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics are situated. Russian media are calling this a tactical retreat all the way back from Izium, but what we're really seeing is Ukrainian forces on their counter-offensive, gathering gathering areas of Ukraine on this counter-offensive at a faster pace than the Russians. The Russians are retreating at a faster pace than the Ukrainians can actually gather this land. So what we're seeing is in the Russian media a complete parallel to what's going on the ground in Ukraine.
Gosh, you used to work for Russia Today, didn't you?
Yes.
And then did you resign when the war started, when Putin invaded Ukraine?
I did. I resigned on an ethical ground. I didn't want to support a war from a position that I couldn't fully support ethically. And also, if a media organ is set up to work against Russophobia and anti-Russian propaganda, that's fine. And that was a big part of my job. It was something that I actively liked doing, pointing out hypocrisy in US politics and UK politics as well. But when it turns out that propaganda is actually the truth, then it doesn't leave anybody a leg to stand on within that media organ. Now, just coming back to when I actually resigned, it's actually tied in with it. On February 24th, there were huge protests in Moscow, thousands of people there, also hundreds of arrests. Now, after that, people were kind of a little bit scared to go out into the streets and to show their dissent towards the war. They were threatened with fines. They were threatened with time in jail for discrediting the Russian army. What we've seen is actually dissent reappear after such things as the massacre in Bucha. Of course, that was one big one back in March. What we're seeing now here in Izium as well. There are 7 deputies who have actually written to the State Duma in St. Petersburg. Sorry, the deputies are from St. Petersburg, have written to the State Duma, St. Petersburg, of course, Vladimir Putin's hometown, calling for Vladimir Putin to be removed from office and tried for treason. The 2 ringleaders of this group have said they've been met with great support in the streets, people asking for selfies, people saying that we'll pay your legal aids to fight any fines, any prison time, and also flights to Mexico if they fancy hot foot and get out of the country.